Good morning. I'm so glad you're here today to talk about one of my favorite musicians, the great German-American conductor, pianist, composer, Andre Previn. Notice I said favorite musicians. Previn was not only a great conductor, he was a world-class pianist in both classical and jazz, a world-class arranger, and fine composer for film, symphony orchestra, opera, and chamber music. Simply the musician's musician. But before we get to all the fun, may I please ask you to push us over the 5,000 subscriber mark. We're almost there. And also to like and comment. The discussion between myself and the viewers is the highlight for me. Also a plug for our fun and entertaining classical music live stream every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Please join us live or catch the rerun directly after the live stream has ended on this channel. Previn was born in 1929 in Berlin to a Jewish family and died at age 89 in New York City. His family fled the Nazis in 1938 and, after a year in Paris, settled in Los Angeles. It wasn't long before the precociously talented Previn was making a name for himself in LA's film studios, arranging and composing specifically for MGM while in high school. And later, while in the Army in San Francisco, he was developing his love for classical music and started conducting with PM on tour, the subject of episode 7 in this series. He returned to LA and worked in the film industry for a further 16 years. But childhood stints in the Berlin and Paris conservatoires and studying with Monteur gave him the classical bug, and he resigned from MGM to make his way in the classical world. Although hustling for conducting gigs, he had time to go back and execute probably the greatest arranging in the history of film in 1964's My Fair Lady, for which he won an Academy Award. Have a listen to the overture, not only superbly arranged, but magnificently played by the LA studio musicians as conducted by Previn. As for jazz, Previn is the opposite of Wynton Marsalis, the other switch-hitting musical genius. Marsalis considers himself a jazz musician who plays classical, and with Previn, it's the opposite. Any way you look at it, both Previn and Marsalis are masters of both. Previn managed an early recording gig with the St. Louis Symphony on CBS, 1964's Copland's The Red Pony, and an early nod to Previn's predilection for English orchestral music, Benjamin Britten's Symphonia de Requiem. This recording opened doors, and in 1967 he landed a gig as MD of Houston. By this time, his name was being discussed for prestigious orchestras, and a year after Houston, Previn was named principal conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra. It was during this 11-year term where both he and the orchestra raised their visibility with famous recordings on both RCA, then EMI, and on television with the very popular Andre Previn's Music Night. The LSO were in great shape in 1968 after a short but musically successful stint with Istvan Cortez. Previn took over a fine orchestra, but through his style and demeanor, eventually won over the generally cynical London players and produced recordings on RCA and later EMI of the highest caliber. For some English players, Previn had a few things against him. Film work, popular song, he was a famous jazz pianist, and American. Yes, the British antipathy towards anything American was still strong in the 60s. Happily, Previn's brilliant musicianship and good humor won over the LSO and British symphony audiences. I'll tell a couple of famous stories in a moment. After the LSO, Previn's star did not shine quite as brightly as conductor of the Pittsburgh Symphony and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And though the LA Phil was a very starry post, it ended badly with some inelegant scheduling between Previn and the next music director, Esa-Pekka Salonen. Previn fared much better in his later years as guest conductor, many times with the Vienna Philharmonic, and recording wonderful CDs with them on Telarc. So let's get to the good stuff. And the great news is that Previn's entire career was blessed with fabulous recordings on both vinyl and digital. And the great news for streamers There are many first-class Previn recordings remastered to high-res on Cobas. And even better news, the massive Warner 96 CD box set is still available and for less than $200 Canadian. $1 a CD, remarkable. The cause? The release of Phono's Death Grip. Just try and find the Meta, Rhino, or Munch box sets for less than $1,000. They were sold out a long time ago. But Previn's superb box is still around. And note that the box, unlike the recent Klemperer box, has not been remastered. So if you're happy with CDs, look no further, you're covered. As for Cobas, many of the streams are CD quality like the box set, but there are some very famous Previn recordings ready for you in high res, and they sound wonderful. But as we get into the nitty-gritty, Previn was very lucky to have EMI engineers at the top of their game, the incredible LSO, and 3 perfect recording locations, Kingsway, Walthamstow, and Watford. Previn's engineers also knew how to get great sound from Abbey Road. Story time! And no Mia or Anne-Sophie Mutter stories. Before getting to my picks for you on all formats, a couple of stories at the very beginning of his time with them. Both have been retold many times, especially by Previn, who by all accounts learned as much from the players as they did from him. The first was at the opening rehearsal. The usually very gentlemanly principal oboe, Roger Lord, I was lucky enough to be coached by Lord a few times, he began the tuning. Except instead of playing the A, he played a B flat, a semitone above. The orchestra played along. Would the new conductor hear the prank, or would he fall at the first fence? Gentlemen, no ladies in the LSO in the late 60s, we'll begin with Heldenleben. He waited, and just before he dropped the baton, he yelled, "Upper semitone, please." The orchestra all applauded. The second story was at a later rehearsal of the same piece, and how he learned not to talk to a collective group of musical geniuses such as the LSO. One morning, he spent a long time discussing how Strauss came to the great recapitulation of the opening melody, the philosophy behind it, and on and on and on, maybe trying to impress the large horn section who played the melody. After about 20 minutes of blather, the equally gentlemanly principal horn, Tony Halstead, stood and told Previn firmly, "You mean you want it louder?" Again, everybody laughed. Not so much Previn, but he says he learned a valuable lesson that day. So my suggestions for you, please leave your favorites in the comments below. We must discuss the elephant in Previn's room, his recordings for RCA. Great halls, recorded by Decca engineers James Locke, Kenneth Wilkinson, and others, pressed in Indianapolis, yet they pale compared to the excellence of the later EMI analog recordings. A simple reason: Dynagroove, that horrible compression RCA added to enable cheap turntables to play the very dynamic records. Along with Previn's famous and wonderful Vaughan Williams cycle, some of which are not Dynagroove, 2 brilliant performances come to mind. His 1966 Shostakovich Symphony No. 5, recorded by James Locke, and his legendary William Walton Symphony No. 1, recorded in 1966, also by Locke, and both ruined by Dynagroove and crying out for a true AAA reissue. Are you listening, Impex? You can stream both and get an idea of just how exceptional these performances and interpretations are. The Walton in particular has never had a better performance. Here are some of the suggestions of recordings that I don't have in-house, but I'm certainly on the hunt. If you are lucky enough to get the Warner box set, it'll have very famous and very popular recordings of not my favorite repertoire, including Carmina Burana and Turangolina Symphony, and others. If this repertoire suits you, stream or buy with confidence. But for a CD purchase for your library, grab his superb Strauss disc with the Vienna Phil on Telhark, Don Quixote with Vienna Philharmonic soloists, and Don Juan. Previn was a great Strauss interpreter, especially in his later years. Lots of depth and storytelling without some of Strauss's bluster. Also by his fantastic Debussy disc, La Mer and the Three Nocturnes. Beautifully played and recorded, so idiomatic, with exceptionally subtle playing from the LSO soloists, and a very exciting La Mer. As for the two recordings I'm on the hunt for, get these on vinyl. Sure, they sound good streamed and on CD, but these are exceptionally vivid analog recordings. One, the absolute best, one in the top 3 or 4 recordings. First, Previn's gorgeous EMI Planets. The playing is dynamic and refined, and Previn's interpretation is straightforward, if that's the way you like them. He's only put to the post on vinyl by Karajan on his famous Decca. I prefer Previn to Steinberg's new Boston DG, the original Source LP, splendid though that is. And Previn is tied by Mehta on his incredible Decca pressing. It's a toss-up. As for the Britten 4C interludes and Symphonia de Requiem, it's an absolute corker. Some of Britain's best music played with power and perfection by the great LSO, one of their finest records, and like the Walton Symphony No. 1, never surpassed. This is originally from 1970, Kingsway Hall. Kyung-Hwa Chung, when she was 22 years old, playing the Tchaikovsky and the Sibelius Violin Concertos. This is on Esoteric, SACD. This is from 2017. Just goes to show what a fantastic accompanist Previn was, very sensitive to all the soloist needs. This is a wonderful performance. She's a remarkable talent for 22 years old. This is probably my favorite Andre Previn compact disc, so much so that I originally owned it when it came out in 1987, and then, of course, lost it somehow or sold it with all my CDs stupidly. So I actually repurchased it at some expense because it's such a brilliant CD, and I wanted it in my library again. Anyway, this is Vaughan Williams' Symphony No. 2, the London Symphony, with Andre Previn, this time conducting the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra on Telhark. This is from 1987, a Jack Renner recording. I can't tell you how much I love this compact disc. The performance is absolutely superb. I mean, look, his Vaughan Williams is incredible from way back in the RCA days. And they're very well played and for the most part well recorded, especially the Nordina groove. But this recording is spectacular. It is so beautiful. The orchestra sounds wonderful. The soloists are great. Barry Griffiths, the leader of the orchestra, plays the Lark Ascending very, very beautifully. And all the movements are wonderful and famous, as Vaughan Williams wrote them. But the Lanto, the second movement, the slow movement, I've never heard it played better than on this recording. The orchestra plays it beautifully. Previn's interpretation is so beautiful. I can highly recommend this recording if you don't have a second Symphony London. I mean, the EMI Bolt is great on vinyl, and you'll be happy with that. I've got it. It's fantastic. But this is a very special performance. Only on digital, only on CD, I think only on CD, and very highly recommended. And this is the one that everybody wants, and I don't blame them. There's been a little bit of revisionism over the years about this recording, but they're wrong. It is still the finest recording of Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony there is. He recorded it 3 times, an early one with the LSO, recorded by Kenneth Wilkinson. It's very good. This one is magnificent. The recording is superb. You'll never hear timpani sound the way they do on this record. Not only the playing, but the actual recording of them. It's an EMI postage stamp. There's something that Previn does with Rachmaninoff. He just gets to the heart of the matter. It's not so much hard on the sleeve. It's just he gets to the heart of the sentiment. And because Rachmaninoff, as you know, is a pretty sensitive person. And this symphony was kind of an answer to his first symphony, which I love, by the way. And Previn has a great first symphony as well. But after the disaster of the opening of the premiere, poor Rachmaninoff had a nervous breakdown and had to be hypnotized to get back into composing. And this was the result. It's not Hollywood East. It's very beautiful romantic music and played to perfection by the LSO. And for my final recommendation, equally as good as his Rachmaninoff second, more Russian music. This is Shostakovich Symphony No. 8. He also recorded this several times with the LSO, another one on Dredge gramophone, which is very good. But this is an EMI analog recording, spectacular in every way. The playing, the recording, the power, fantastic playing. And the interpretation is beautiful. It's heartbreaking and scary. It's so powerful in many places. The LSO play the absolute living hell out of this. Definitely one of your 2 or 3 LPs that are must-haves. Very highly recommended. So there you go. That's it. A lot of Previn. Now you could choose 20 or 30 of those CDs in those box sets and have fantastic first-class performances. And also have fun streaming. There's lots to listen to. A great, great conductor. And very much missed. Also, check out his jazz. His jazz is incredible too. His early jazz on, I think it's RCA and CBS is very, very good. His later jazz on Telak, I don't think it's quite as good, but still beautifully performed and beautifully recorded. And of course, his chamber music is excellent too. What a great artist. So thank you so much for joining me today and enjoying these great recordings by Andre Previn. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next video.